So you didn't come this far to only come this far. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a bonus episode of the Fitz and Franson Show. I'm Fitz. I'm Franson. Earlier, we dropped an episode called The Quiet Failure of February, where we talked about the February ghost, that silent killer of goals that shows up when your New Year's motivation dies. Yeah, the response to the episode was actually pretty incredible in a short amount of time here. We talked about in that episode the why most goals fail because people try to achieve new outcomes with old identities. One question we got was, okay, I get it, but how do I actually do something about it? Yeah, so that's what this episode is. This isn't theory. This is the playbook. We're going to give you the tactical, step-by-step tools that even we use here to kill the February ghost before it even knows you're coming. If the last episode was the diagnosis, this one is the prescription. I like it. So, Franson, in our last episode, we introduced the idea of the subtract and replace framework, right? It starts with a tolerance audit. For those who missed it, that means writing down everything you tolerate, from a late employee to sloppy reports to a missed workout in your personal life. Yeah, but just listing what you tolerate isn't enough. You have to understand the identity that allows that tolerance. So here's your first tactical tool: the 5 whys of tolerance. So, Jay, you mentioned this in the past, and sometimes what you've referred to it as is the why shovel, I think, right? It really is that simple. You take one thing you tolerate, Fitz. Let's role play actually for a little bit here for a minute. Okay. I know the salespeople are detail oriented and very conscientious, but just for role playing pretends, let's say you have a hard time with your sales team not updating the CRM. Oh. Now, I'll walk you through the why 5 times. So first off, Fitz, why do you tolerate it? Because I'm exhausted chasing them. Okay, good. Yeah, but why do you tolerate that? Because I hate being a micromanager. Oh, that's a big one. So why do you tolerate that? Because I want them to see me as a supportive leader, not a taskmaster. Okay. So why do you tolerate it? Because I believe my job is to remove obstacles and not administrative work. Okay. Yeah. Okay, one last time. Why do you tolerate it? Maybe because at my core, my identity is the helper and not the standards enforcer. I guess in this example, that would be the real problem. The problem isn't the CRM. It's really that my identity is the helper. And that's in direct conflict with the goal of having a data-driven sales organization. So truthfully, in this example, you can't have both at the same time. Yeah, exactly. And this isn't just business theory. The Why Shovel is a great example or an easy to use tool to help yourself whittle away down to the root of what's going on so that you can make real change. Look at Satya Nadella. When he took over Microsoft in 2014, the company was essentially dying because it was tolerating a know-it-all culture. They were arrogant, they were siloed, and they were losing. Yeah, from what I remember of that story too, I know that he went through the whys, or a version of the whys at least, right? Why do we tolerate some of the infighting that was going on apparently? And some of those answers were probably because we think we have the smartest people in the room. Well, why? Because our identity is that we are the dominant, unshakable experts in our field. And really, we're just know-it-alls. Yeah, he drew the conclusion through this exercise that the identity that they had at Microsoft was the enemy. But he didn't just launch new products, he launched a new identity. From know-it-all to learn-it-all. He subtracted the tolerance for arrogance and replaced it with a standard of curiosity. And the result, I mean, we know what Microsoft's done in the last decade. Microsoft's market cap tripled. But in order for this to happen, the identity shift did have to come first. Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable, that kind of hockey stick, moment for them in their trajectory. It's an important thing. It's just a good reminder that you're not going to get that growth without identifying who you are and who you want to be. And the gap that is between those two things is that identity, like you just mentioned. Franson, you've shared some stories in the past about your previous life in that transit world. And it's funny because as you're talking about this and brought it up, it made me think about that, and almost that extreme kind of opposite end of it, where you guys, I think you've mentioned, we're almost like a culture of don't learn new things until you have to. If I remember right, it was you didn't really get trained on a lot of things, and other senior people were like, oh, you'll learn it when you need to. Mm-hmm. It's a weird culture thing where you're either like, we've learned it all, we know it all, or we don't want to learn anymore. But identifying those as issues and either doing something about it or not is going to keep you from going where you want to go. It's kind of wild, right? So it's an interesting thing. And again, it takes somebody to come in and rattle the cages. And I think in this case with Microsoft, one of the things that's really unique is they had a lot of very smart people there, and being told that they needed to be very different could not have been an easy conversation. So if you are listening and think that this might be a difficult conversation to have with yourself or others, know that there's probably people that have had harder ones than the ones you're going to have, or at least the same. You've done the 5 whys, Franson, here. You know your new identity needs to be the standards enforcer in that role play example, at least that we did. But just saying that is meaningless. Your brain needs the proof. This brings us to, let's call it tactical tool number 2, and we'll call it the evidence log. Yeah, that's good. And this is so critical. An identity without evidence is just an affirmation. It's a wish. Your brain is the lawyer. It needs facts. So the evidence log is how you provide them. Perfect. So here's how it works. If you're listening, get a notebook, some sort of document or piece of paper, whatever it is. At the top of that page, write down your new identity. Whatever that new identity statement is, I am a leader who enforces standards. Every single day, you have one job. Write down one piece of evidence from that day that proves the new identity is true. Yeah. And it could be small. I corrected a typo on a client-facing email, or it could be big. I had the hard conversation with one of my underperforming salespeople. The size doesn't matter. The consistency does. You're building a legal case for your new self. Yeah, it's powerful. And the lawyer things is a great example. And the documentation, my wife's an attorney, so everything's documented for sure. Yep. So I can relate to it. It's very similar, almost identical to what Alan Mullally did for Ford when he helped save them from potential bankruptcy that they were going through a couple of years back too. Ford's identity, from what I understand and the stories that were being told, had become kind of siloed and protected, and not a whole lot of sharing of where people were and standings were, right? And his vision or his new identity for the company was One Ford. Maybe you've heard that phrase, reading stories about the turnaround for them. Basically, the idea was that a team that works together with radical transparency. Cool concept. Yeah, and for radical transparency, I should let you know that I'm really more of a GM guy. Not really a Ford guy. Well, again, the whole sales and marketing thing. I got my F-150 sitting in the driveway, buddy. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, my wife was like, I think I want a Lincoln. And I'm like, no. She's good people. She's good people. No. Let's go with a GMC product. But here we are. I get in her Lincoln when we go places. Yeah. So yeah, but he didn't just put up posters. And sometimes we think in leadership, well, I told the team it should have been enough. He created an evidence log, and it was a pretty powerful way in which he did it. He called it the business plan review meeting. Every week, every executive had to present their progress using a color-coded system, green, yellow, or red. Yeah, it's funny, even as we get into adult age, right, we're still... Colors mean something, stickers mean something, but they mean something. Even the simple red, yellow, green is still a big deal to us. But as the story goes for that, Franson, that first meeting was kind of much of the same. Everyone's status was still green. And Mullally famously apparently said in this meeting, we're losing, I think it was $12.7 billion this year. I wish I had enough to lose that and still be in an office. Yeah. But he said that, and he said, and everything's still green. I mean, and he knew at that point, it was pretty obviously that the old identity was still there, and hiding of problems and issues for every one of those leaders in those departments had not changed in any way, shape, or form, despite the posters or whatever it might be, or the conversations that had been put up around the office or had around the office. So kind of polarizing moment at that point. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall in that meeting and just watch. Everybody's like, we're good. And he's like, really? You're all good? It's that meme where the dog's in the house and everything's burning. Everything's fine. Like, yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. No, everyth's good on our end. Yeah, exactly. Just so what I love is he opened up the door to permission to share freely. The very next week, as the story goes, one brave executive showed a red status on a major project. The room went silent. Everyone expected him to be fired because the culture up to that point was everything's okay, even if it isn't. Instead, Mullally started clapping. I'd imagine it was a slow clap, right? I could just picture him be like, right?
Yeah.
He's like, thank you for the visibility. That was the first entry into the evidence log for Ford's new identity. He had created a space and he proved that it was safe to be honest. That one action changed the company forever.
Yeah, the slow clap idea, I think is right. I don't imagine he like threw like a parade for the red, kind of thing. But the idea that it is better to tell me where you're failing versus hiding it is a thing that's really important. It's funny because we're talking about a slightly different concept here before our show. But I just had this memory come back to me of something I was watching either this morning or yesterday. I can't remember now, but Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about if your kid comes off a court and is crying after losing a basketball game or losing a wrestling match or something along those lines, and you tell them, hey, it's all okay. Winning and losing doesn't matter as long as you have fun. You're doing them a disservice because you're taking the competitive nature away from them. And I'm butchering the heck out of what he said. It was really well said the way he said it. He's got something really great. He's very competitive and he wants to win. And we're villainizing like losing so much that losing is an okay thing so long as you're learning from it. And we've done it so much that in a corporate world where we need to know you're losing $12.7 billion and everything's green, we can't fix it if we don't see it. Right. And you and I, Jay, we work with clients that say, well, I don't want to post the numbers because I want people to feel bad. Well, how do they know whether or not they need to work more, harder, better, or do they think that they're doing fine? Right. Yeah. And if they think they're doing fine and you're getting more and more angry with the fact that they're failing every day, who's really at fault for their failure?
Yeah.
It's you, right? And can you create a culture where they can come into an office or a building and say, hey, I'm struggling right now. I'm falling behind my number. I'm falling off my pace. I need help. That's what that slow clap, as you put it, that's what that slow clap's about, is we've hit a spot where you can raise your hand in a room and say, I need help. That's what that was about. That's a cool story.
Yeah. And a couple of practical things in leadership. I'm glad you shared that. The buzzword empathy is really big, and people are like, oh, you need to lead with empathy. Oh, you need to be empathetic. You need to understand your people. And empathy should let you know that that person is struggling, and you should feel the discomfort that they feel. Now, the next step of that, and one of my favorite authors is Brene Brown. She says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And so when you're thinking about creating this evidence log, clear is kind, even if it's uncomfortable. And so you're going to be doing this for yourself. Be clear with yourself. This is where I'm at. And with your staff, use empathy. It is a superpower. Know your people, know where they're at, but then communicate clearly. And scoreboards, evidence logs, stuff that's put in front of the team for them to see, that's absolutely powerful.
My old man used to tell us all the time that you have a responsibility to be honest to yourself and to those around you about kind of where you stand to your standards and where everybody else does too. And I think that was a really good way of making sure that we understood that you had to be honest in your communication with people, because if you weren't, then it wasn't their fault that they weren't living up to the expectations that you had for them or what you needed from them. If they weren't giving it to you, then it's your fault. You haven't asked them for it, kind of thing. Once you ask them for it, if they're not meeting those standards, then it might be theirs. But then it's also their responsibility to ask for help, kind of thing. So it's a two-way street as long as you've paved both sides of the street. Yep. So cool thing. All right. Yeah. So I feel like we could ramble on about that one forever, but we promised everybody a couple of different tools here. Franson, we're auditing your tolerances. We're building that evidence for your new identity there. Now comes probably the hardest part. We're setting and enforcing new standards. And that's a challenge, maybe even for yourself a lot of it, but definitely when we're doing it for our teams as well too. But this is usually where that February ghost kind of takes over and dominates the game for most.
Yeah. Yeah. And the overused example is weight loss. January 1st, I'm going to hit the gym every day. I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And we go all in. And we somehow think that without changing our identity or our habits, there's room on the calendar for working out 6 days a week. And then we get burnt out because we tried to go in all at once. And people think that they may need to make these massive sweeping changes. They try to go from 0 to 100. And a lot of them, you can burn out in as little of a week. A lot of us, it's a slow burn through January. And by February, we're not going to the gym anymore. So this is where we introduce the tactical tool number 3, the aggregation of marginal gains, or the 1% rule.
Way easier to say the 1% rule, in my humble opinion. So I'm going to stick with that, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Yeah. So look, this comes from Dave Brailsford, and the man who is responsible for transforming the British cycling team. And I know that maybe not everybody's a cycling enthusiast, but stick with me here because it's a pretty cool story. For centuries, they were kind of the joke of the cycling world, much like, sorry, you're a Vikings fan, buddy.
Yep. You had to go there.
Well, here's the comparison. So, when he took over that team, they had not won a Tour de France in 110 years. Mm-hmm. I can joke because I'm a Washington fan. We're not far behind you. Okay. It was so bad though, from what I understand about it. And I'm familiar with his story. I'm not a big cyclist guy, but what I understand, bike manufacturers wanted nothing to do with the team. Like, they didn't want to be associated with losers. That was how bad that team was for the longest time.
Yeah. That would be pretty hard on the ego. You go up to, I don't know, the brands that are around in cycling but Specialized or Trek or one of these brands, and be like, hey guys, want to support us? They're like, oh man, you suck too bad for us.
You guys thought about
any
walking?
Of your cyclists? Maybe switch sports. Yeah. Maybe do competitive pogo sticking or something.
Exactly.
But Brailsford's philosophy was pretty simple. He said, improve everything that goes into riding a bike by just 1%.
Yeah.
He believed that if you improved every tiny component, the compounded effect would be enormous.
Yeah. It's really cool. If you dig into the story, he was not just talking about obvious things that we all would think of. And when I say we all, again, I'm not a huge cyclist guy. So like when I say we all, like the seat or like the tire grips or things like that, they actually hired for the entire team. They hired surgeons to teach the riders how to wash their hands better and more efficiently so they would avoid germs and avoid getting sick as often. They tested different massage gels to improve muscle recovery timeframes and those kinds of things. They even painted the inside of the trucks that they transported the bikes in pure white, so that they could monitor how much dust would get in there and potentially mess up the gears and cogs of the bikes that were being transported inside of them. I mean, they were absolutely fanatical about every possible detail that they could watch, measure, and test.
Yeah, man, just think about that. Their new identity wasn't a team that wins. It was a team that obsesses over every single detail. The 1% improvements, these were the standards that proved that identity was real. And the result, in the 10-year span that he kind of jumped in and helped, they won 178 world championships. And 5 of those were Tour de France victories, which is just the gold standard in the cycling world. Just crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, if you're a business owner and you're listening to this as a story, it's biking versus that, but it overlaps, there's no doubt. Here's where I think it does. You can't do it all overnight. You can't take where you were yesterday and be where you want to be in your goals and do that tomorrow. What you can do is you can start to think about these things in those small bite-sized chunks. What that is that 1% standard you can you could implement tomorrow. What is that? What could you implement starting tomorrow? Is it starting every meeting exactly on time? Hey, 10 a.m. is the meeting. We're starting at 10 a.m. Is it a rule that no client email gets unanswered for more than 3 hours? Is it a new way we answer the phone? And this is how everybody does it. Look, find whatever that 1% is and enforce it relentlessly. Jay, we talk about percentages on a regular basis. Think about it from a marketing percentage. If you said, we just went through annual planning with a lot of our clients, right? And we have, here's where we are today, here's where we want to be at the end of the year. Well, if we said, okay, I want to produce, I don't know, let's just say 4,000 leads this year as a company. Well, as the starting line, that's huge. But if I break that down to the ridiculous of every hour I need to produce this many leads, it becomes a lot easier. Think about 1% improvement on marketing every single day for the next 365 days. What does that look like at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's almost exponential growth.
Incredible, right? I would ask every person that is listening to think about it from this perspective too. If you got, say, even let's use demo percentage as one of them. That's a number that we track or we encourage our people to track. If you found a way to get your sales team to demo 1% more of your leads this year versus last year, how many more demos would you run? Now take your close rate and compare that to how many of those you've actually demoed. How many more of those are sales? How many dollars is that in top line revenue, and push that all the way through to net? How many extra dollars in that? 1% makes a big, big difference. And that's just by staying at that house a little bit longer.
Yeah.
kind of a big deal.
Yeah. If you throw 1% in marketing, 1% in sales, 1% in production, 1% in just kind of the way the business is run, this is massive changes within the organization, but acceptable. It isn't a reinventing the wheel type of situation.
Not great at math. That's like 670,000% or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. A million. It is a million percent. Well, let's put all this together into a simple toolkit for everyone listening. 3 tools to kill the February ghost for good. We talked about the 5 whys of tolerance. We call it the why shovel. Use this why shovel to uncover the root identity behind your bad habits. Ask yourself why a bunch of times. Sometimes the solution is only one why. It's because I hate doing it. And you know that you can find an answer to that pretty quickly, but sometimes it takes some digging. The next one we talked about is the evidence log. It's just really important to build a legal case for your new identity. One of my favorite books by Dr. Benjamin Hardy is The Gap and the Gain. A lot of us tend to be looking at the gap in front of us. We haven't gotten there yet. And something like the evidence log is the gain. It's the record of the gain. It's how you turn around and look behind you and see how far you've come. So that log's important. The 1% rule. To set and enforce new standards that are too small to fail. Start out small.
I like it. So, look, last episode, we challenged you to subtract one thing. Today, I'm going to give you a new challenge. We're going to call it, we'll call it the Identity Action Challenge.
Yeah. Here's what we want you to do. There will be a link to click in our bio where we've created a free 1-page PDF that walks you through these 3 tools. We want you to fill it out.
A little bit of homework. While you're filling it out, here's what you're going to do. You're going to identify one tolerance. You're going to use the 5 whys and find the root identity, create your new identity statement, and then I want you to define the first 3, just 3, 1% standards that you can implement this week to build that evidence for it.
Yeah. And here's your incentive. We like giving away stuff, right? Fitz. We want you to send us a picture of your completed 1-page playbook to either of our emails, either J@Powerful or Matt@Powerful. We're going to pick the most powerful one. We will, I swear to God, promise we will read these. We'll take our time. And then that person that we pick is going to get a free hour coaching session with Fitz and me to help them implement it.
Top to bottom, left to right. I promise I will read all of them, right? Or Jay will read them out loud and I'll make sure
Yeah.
All right. So look, we're not just giving you some ideas here today. Hopefully we're going to give you a system, but we also want to help hold you accountable for using it. And that's really how change happens. But you got to do something with it, guys.
Yeah. Again, last episode, we did kind of tell you that your goals for this year are already dead if you're not willing to let go of the part of that old self that is holding you back. This episode, we gave you some practical tools to make it happen.
At February Ghost, it feeds on ambiguity and inaction, right? It's an SAT word, Jay, if you're not familiar with it, right? So this playbook that we're handing over to you is all about clarity and action. It's going to give you an opportunity to move from I want to I am, from I should to I do.
Yeah, the choice is yours. You can listen to this episode and say, oh, that was interesting. Oh, that was a good episode. And go back right back to your old patterns. Or you can go grab the PDF, do the work, and make this the year you finally become the person you need to be to have that business that you've always wanted.
Yeah, well said, sir. So look, thanks for tuning into the bonus episode. Go download that playbook like Jay said. Send us some pictures. Take the challenge. We look forward to Jay reading, me listening, and we'll pick the best one we get, guys.
Yep, always a pleasure. We'll see you next time on the Fitz and Franson Show.
Happy hunting, everybody.